Hello, am I audible?
Sir.
So good morning. Let me share my screen first. Okay, can you give me rights to share my screen?
Yes, sir. Just now again. Please check, sir.
So is my screen visible?
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir.
So I'll wait for another 3 minutes.
Sure, sure, sir.
Start at sharp 10.
Good morning, all faculties and students. Welcome to APSSTC Engineering Webinar Series 2021 on cooling of next generation electronic device with advanced working fluids and heat sinks. Today here we have Dr. Rajesh Nimmagadda, MTech Gold Medalist and PhD from IIT Hyderabad as resource. Sir, Rajesh Garu, over to you, sir. Is my voice audible?
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, all the participants and faculty or officials from APSSDC. Thank you for inviting me for this webinar, and it's my pleasure to be here. So in today's webinar, I'm going to share cooling of next generation electronic devices using advanced working fluids and heat sinks topic. So what we worked so far regarding this particular research area is what I'm going to share in the coming slides. So coming to the first slide, mostly we are going to focus on computational heat transfer with some amount of experiments. The reason why we want to go for computational heat transfer is that you all know, as mechanical engineers or chemical engineers or any other sort of engineers, you all know that computational domain is one of the primary inexpensive tool that will help us to design and develop efficient systems without involving much initial investment. We don't need to put much cost in order to do this computational analysis, but we will come up with some sort of reasonable and reliable outcome. So bisecting the title into two parts. The first one is computational. We are going to use computers in order to do the mathematical calculations. And the second one is heat transfer. You all are well aware that heat is an energy which flows due to temperature difference. So there are different modes: conduction, convection, radiation. So we are focusing mostly on conduction plus convection in the upcoming slides. Coming to the organization of the talk, so these are the subsections that I'm going to cover, starting from introduction. What are all the crucial steps that are involved in this particular research area? Then I will be talking about some numerical and computational solver, that is conjugate homogeneous heat transfer model with forced convection. Then conjugate multi-phase, that is two-phase forced convection model, and natural convection two-phase model, and conclusions. So coming to the introduction, this particular slide is very important because it talks about how the computer processors are changing with respect to time. So cooling of power transistors, microchips, microprocessors, and laser diodes, etc. is very, very essential because they are dissipating enormous amounts of heat. So if you look into Moore's law, it is stating that the number of transistors on any processor that you find in any electronic gadget, the number of transistors on a processor is getting doubled on an average for every 15 months because the size of the electronic gadget is becoming very, very minimalistic. So the number of processors in order to increase its performance are getting doubled on an average for every 15 months. So I have given two charts, two graphs. So the left side graph is showing the transistor size. So currently the transistor size is reduced to 125 nanometer in 2020. Okay, and if you see the right side graph, the number of transistors, okay, that are getting doubled. So with respect to the type of processor, so with respect to the Moore's law that we stated. So transistor count with respect to year, that is what we are going to show here. So from these two graphs, we can understand that the number of transistors on a processor is getting doubled for every 15 months. And as a result of this, more heat will be generated. And this heat need to be effectively removed in order to keep the electronic gadget within its permissible operational limits. So coming to the critical temperature for Intel series CPUs. So you know that Intel series CPUs will hit a maximum temperature of 100 degrees centigrade, as you can see in Intel Mobile Celeron and Core 2 Duo. and the minimum temperature will be 54.8 degrees, as you can see in Intel Core 2 Extreme. For AMD Athlon CPUs, the range varies from 95 degrees centigrade maximum to 61 degrees centigrade minimum. So from these 2 points, you can understand that what is the highest maximum temperature that a CPU will generate, and this temperature need to be cut down in order to make the processor to withstand for longer time and make the electronic gadget to run for longer periods. So you in the red color text, I have given the best CPUs that are present in the market as of now. So the first one is AMD Ryzen 9 300X, which actually gives 82 degrees centigrade maximum temperature, which is far higher, and these are the top 10 best CPUs as per TechRadar website, the reference I have given in the side. So from these points, you can clearly understand what is the maximum temperature that a CPU is generating, and effective cooling techniques are really essential in order to keep these temperatures to minimal. So thermal management of electronic devices is one of the most promising field, and it requires liquid coolants. You all are aware that in your laptops or in your desktops at home, there are some cooling fans. So these fans will try to extract air through the heat sink, and by means of forced convection, this air will try to extract enormous amount of heat, and it will dissipate outside, but this is not very much efficient. So nowadays people are going for liquid coolants in order to cool the electronic devices. So there are two companies, Jalman and Thermaltake. You can Google them down. So these are the cooling solution companies, and they even patented liquid cooling systems recently, around 1 or 2 years before, and these are used essentially for cooling of processors. So NVIDIA Tesla K20 series professional computing card is already using high performance full cover water block. So this actually says us that liquid cooling of electronic devices is also practically reliable, because companies are marching towards that, as well as research is also more focusing in that particular field. So there are mainly two important ways in which we can cool an electronic device. The first one is by using efficient working fluid. So we are going to use nanofluids as efficient working fluids because they possess high thermal conductivity, and as a result, more heat can be extracted. So a new class of heat transfer fluids with superior heat transfer characteristics will be used. And the second important way in cooling of electronics is by using efficient cooling system, that is heat sink. So generally we are using microchannel heat sinks, but we are also using closed heat sinks like lid-driven cavities, because microchannel heat sink is an open heat sink, which requires an additional pump in order to inject liquid through the channel. So the back of the processor will be grooved in such a way that coolant can be circulated through that particular micro-sized groove, and as a result, more contact area will be made with the heated surface, and as a result of this, enormous heat can be. So coming to the best liquid CPU coolers as on date. So these are the 8 best liquid CPU coolers that are present in the market. Corsair Hydro Series H100i Pro, Deepcool Captain 240 Pro V2. Actually, companies are trying to develop liquid CPU coolers. That is what I'm going to stress in this slide. So they are going to march towards cooling of high performance computers, high performance electronic gadgets using liquid coolants, liquid cooling heat sinks. So these are some of the best liquid CPU coolers as examples as on date. So coming to the crucial steps that I'm going to share, the first one will be the objective numerical study on the heat transfer performance of liquids in microchannels and mini enclosures. Then we are going to focus on numerical study on how to achieve this, both using single phase numerical solver as well as multi-phase numerical solver. And we are going to verify our numerical solver with the existing results. That is like we are going to validate our solver, and we are going to use that solver in real time, and then we are going to evaluate the numerical results for both flow and heat transfer performance. Now I'm not going to discuss much about these because straight away I'm going to get into the concept. So if you can see this slide, I have given you a micro channel, as you can see on the screen, a three-dimensional micro channel where the width of the channel is very, very large in such a way that we can go for two-dimensional analysis rather than three-dimensional approach. So the step one of our numerical study is to develop a homogeneous conjugate, that is a single phase conjugate. Conjugate in the sense transfer of heat is associated with both solid as well as fluid regions. So we are going to develop that, and we are going to validate that solver, and we are going to test it for different Reynolds numbers in a micro channel heat sink. So heat is supplied to the bottom, as you can see on the screen, and the flow is coming from left side with a velocity ui and a temperature Ti, and solid region is present below the fluid region, because if you look at your electronic gadgets like your processor, let us take your motherboard in your laptop or in your desktop, they are made up of silicon material. So generally in most of the electronic gadgets, the commonly used material will be silicon. So whenever heat transfer is being associated, so there will be two modes. One is convection through silicon and the other one is convection, forced convection, either through air, or if you use liquid coolant, it will be through liquid. So that is the reason we have taken a solid region under the fluid region, and this solid region is made up of silicon because it has high thermal conductivity and electronic reliability. And we developed a solver. So the right side equation is the interface boundary condition, where we balanced the heat flux in the solid region and the heat flux in the fluid region, and we obtained interface temperature by differentiating. Now these are the governing equations. As you all know, the basic mechanical engineer will be knowing these. These are Navier-Stokes equations, continuity, which talks about conservation of mass, momentum equation, which talks about conservation of momentum, as well as energy equation, which talks about law of conservation of energy. And since there is a solid region underneath the fluid zone, there will be a heat conduction equation also. So we are going to talk about steady state analysis. So our transient terms, that is rate of change of any variable with respect to time, will be neglected. So simplified marker and cell algorithm on collocated grid is used. If you, I don't know how many of you are aware of this particular solver, ANSYS Fluent. So whenever you are designing a geometry, and when you are doing particular flow analysis in the Fluent, you can have an option of selecting appropriate solver like simple, piezo, coupled, so on. So simple algorithm is semi-implicit method for pressure linked equations, whereas a SMAC algorithm is a simplified marker and cell algorithm. So you need to select appropriate algorithm depending upon the type of problem you are solving. So it is not like a blind man rule. You can select any algorithm you want. You need to base your algorithm on the type of problem you are solving. So here we have used simplified marker and cell algorithm. I'm going to results further. So whenever I am using this particular nanofluid, as you all know, if you are not aware, I'm going to repeat it. Nanofluids are nothing but we are going to disperse nano-sized particles into pure fluids. So you all know nano means 10 power minus 9, right? So that much smallest sized particles are being dispersed into the matrix of base fluid like water, ethanol, methanol, so on. So here we used water as the base fluid, that is the primary fluid, and we dispersed different types of nanoparticles into the base fluid. So the fluid finally is a combination of liquid plus solid particles with nanometer size. So whenever I am taking these nanofluids, I need to obtain the properties with respect to both the pure fluid as well as nanoparticle. So that is the reason whenever we are evaluating thermophysical properties, we are using existing correlations that are being developed based on experimental results. So if you look at the screen, I am talking about density, where rho nf subscript nf denotes nanofluid. So density of nanofluid equals to 1 minus 5 times rho bf, where bf represents base fluid, that is water, plus 5 times of rho p, where p represents particle, that is nanoparticle. So the final nanofluid density depends upon the density of base fluid, that is water, plus the density of nanoparticle that is dispersed into it, in addition to the volume concentration, how much percentage of particles that are being dispersed into the base fluid. Similarly, specific heat is also evaluated as given in equation 2, and the references for these two correlations are given here. And thermal conductivity is also evaluated. Thermal conductivity is also evaluated using thermal conductivity is also evaluated using these two correlations, KNF by KBF. If you look at the first correlation, we are using that for spherical particles. We are using it for cylindrical particles like nanotubes. So single walled carbon nanotubes or multi-walled carbon nanotubes, so on. So whenever we are dispersing carbon nanotubes, we are going to use the first thermal conductivity correlation, where n is nothing but the empirical shape factor, where the nanotube shape is taken into account. And the second equation is used for spherical particles, that is like spheres, metallic spheres like copper spheres or aluminum oxide spheres and so on. So the dynamic viscosity is evaluated using equation 3. So these are the correlations that we used for obtaining the thermophysical properties of nanofluids. So now coming to the grid dependency test. So I don't know how many of you are aware about this test. Whenever you are using any commercial solver or existing code, you cannot run the simulation. You cannot run the simulation with whatever grid size that comes to your mind. So randomly you cannot pick some amount of cells and you cannot run the simulation. You need to first see what is the optimum grid size beyond which the accuracy of your solution is not altered. So if you look at the screen, the left side image talks about the velocity profile at 3 different grids: 175 by 40, 200 by 46, 225 by 52. And the right side image talks about the temperature at the exit of the microchannel. So the horizontal line is the conduction in the silicon solid zone, and the dropped line is the convection in the fluid zone. So if you see that at the 3 grid sizes that we selected, the velocity profile and the temperature profile remains unchanged, which means that we can use any of this grid size. The reason for doing this mesh independence test is because you can fix your optimum grid size beyond which your accuracy of solution will not alter, so that your computational cost and your computational time will be conserved. So you don't need to run your simulation for so many days. Suppose if you are going to solve some complex problems where your cell limitations reaches to 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, 25 lakhs, and so on. You don't need to wait for weeks and months to run your simulation. So if you fix your optimum grid size, you can run your simulation at that particular grid size and you can get a reliable, reasonable result. So the table that you see on the screen shows the validation. We have used the validation of Mohammed Kaltech paper. So at different Reynolds numbers, the experimental value, the numerical value, and the present value, you can see there is no much difference for pure water as well as aluminum oxide nanofluids. So coming to the results and discussion, so you can see the contours. So the velocity contour on the left side and the temperature contour on the right side. We have used hybrid nanofluid. This is the first time concept we have used in the all over the world, and this paper was published in 2015 in European Journal of Mechanics and Biofluids. So the first concept that we used here is that based on the approach of Prandtl number, we have fixed our nanoparticle cost, and we came up with a conclusion that by using hybrid nanofluid, one can reduce the cost of the working fluid and can achieve higher heat transfer rates. So this is the one promising point that we noticed in our simulations, in our studies. So that I'm going to show you in the coming slides. So these are the velocities of hybrid nanofluids. So when I'm using this particular word hybrid nanofluid, which means instead of mixing one particular nanoparticle type into the base fluid, I am going to mix more than one type. That means 2 or 3 or 4 or so on. So I can fix whatever particle types that I want. I can disperse them into the matrix of the base fluid and I can form a nanofluid. So here, if you look at the screen, I have used both Al2O3, that is aluminum oxide, and silver, that is Ag. So I have used a mixer of Al2O3 and Ag, silver nanoparticles in different proportions, and I have obtained my results. Similarly, if you look at the last figure, the corner figure, I have used different nanoparticle diameters as well, starting from 30 nanometers, 50 nanometers, 70, 90. So when we are changing the diameter of the nanoparticle, how the temperature is being affected, and as a result of this, how the heat transfer performance is being affected. That is what we studied. So finally, we came up with these results, and these results are published by me in 2015 in European Journal of Mechanics with highest number of citations, around 100 plus. And if you look at the left side figure, I am showing you the average convective heat transfer coefficient on y-axis and Reynolds number on the x-axis. You can see that the blue color line is the top, even though the difference between red color dot and the blue color dot is much smaller. It has a significant effect on the cost because here we are using silver, which is very, very expensive metal. So the blue color line is nothing but 3 volume percentage hybrid nanofluid, which is a combination of 0.6% aluminum oxide plus 2.4% silver nanoparticles. And it actually gives highest heat transfer performance when compared to pure silver. Even though pure silver is having high thermal conductivity, but still this particular hybrid nanofluid combination gives us highest heat transfer performance. Similarly, if you look at the right side figure, the highest heat transfer performance is given by the pink colored line, that is for 30 nanometers particles. So when I'm reducing the size of the particle, nanoparticle that is present in the base fluid, pure water, I am getting highest average heat transfer coefficient. This is because of high surface to volume ratio. If the particle size is very, very small, the contact area that the particle is making with its surrounding liquid will be very high, and as a result more amount of heat can be extracted. That is what this particular graph shows. So the reason why we are getting higher average convective heat transfer coefficient for hybrid nanofluid is because of the concept of Prandtl number. As you know, as you all know, that Prandtl number is defined as the ratio of momentum diffusivity to thermal diffusivity. So for hybrid nanofluids with this particular combination, Prandtl number is greater than 1. So which means momentum diffusivity dominates thermal diffusivity. So which actually means heat transfer by convection dominates heat transfer by conduction. But when Prandtl number is less than 1, in the case of 3 volume percentage silver, thermal diffusivity dominates momentum diffusivity, which actually shows conduction dominates convection. So the thermal conductivity value of 3 volume percentage silver is 2.8602, whereas for hybrid nanofluid it is a 2.4499. You can see that hybrid nanofluid is having less thermal conductivity compared to silver, 3 volume percentage silver, but still its heat transfer performance, as you saw in the previous slide, is high. The reason is because its Prandtl number is greater than 1 and momentum diffusivity dominates thermal diffusivity. So this is what we concluded, and whenever we are using some amount of concentration, nanoparticle concentration in the matrix of the base fluid, we need to be sure about this particular Prandtl number, and we cannot disperse as much amount of volume fraction as we want. There is a limitation because of this particular Prandtl number concept. So coming to the result 2, we have used carbon nanotubes, that is a single-walled carbon nanotubes, and we have used gold nanoparticles in 3 different concentrations and different nanoparticle diameters. When I am talking about spherical nanoparticle, I will be talking about only diameter, because a sphere has only one dimension, that is the diameter or the radius. But when I am talking about carbon nanotube, I will end up with 2 dimensions. One is the diameter of the tube and the other one is the length of the tube. So when I am balancing my dimensions, I need to focus both on the length of the tube as well as on the diameter of the tube. That is the reason, if you look at here, nanotubes I have taken with different dimensions, 2 nanometers to 3 micrometers, 2 nanometers to 6 micrometers. So that means I am keeping the diameter constant and increasing the length. At the same time, I am keeping the length constant, I am increasing the diameter. So now I am going to directly show you the results. So this is the result. If you look at the left side graph on the screen, so the like before, I am talking about average convective heat transfer coefficient on y-axis and Reynolds number on the x-axis. So if you look at the graph, you can clearly see that 2 volume percentage gold nanoparticles with 70 nanometer diameter and 0.5 volume percentage carbon nanotube with the 2 nanometers diameter and 3 micron meter length is giving same heat transfer performance. And at the same time, 2 volume percentage gold with the 50 nanometers particle diameter and 1.5 volume percentage carbon nanotube with the 2 nanometer diameter and 3 micrometer length is again giving the same heat transfer performance. So by this result, we can conclude that instead of using gold nano particles, which are very, very expensive, we can replace it with single-walled carbon nanotubes. Because synthesizing carbon nanotubes nowadays is very, very easy. So many chemists are doing in their laboratories, which are available at very, very less price. So we can even shift from one nanoparticle to another nanoparticle by balancing our heat transfer criteria, and we can even attain reasonable costs. If you look at the right side figure, I have shown the average convective heat transfer coefficient for different dimensions of the single walled carbon nanotube. But you can see the green color dot is the highest heat transfer performance criteria. That is 2 nanometers diameter and 12 micron meters length. So if you see that when I am increasing the length of the carbon nanotube that is present in the base fluid, I am getting higher heat transfer performance rather than increasing the diameter of the nanotube. The reason is because if you take a tube, a nanotube, it is a hollow. You don't have anything inside, right? It's a hollow. But throughout its length, there will be material, there will be solid throughout its length. But inside, since it is hollow, there will be no material. So heat transfer along the length of the nanotube will dominate heat transfer along the radius of the nanotube because of the presence of material. So that is the reason when I am increasing the length of the nanotube, I am getting higher heat transfer performance rather than increasing the diameter of the nanotube. So with this particular effect, you can fix that we can only attain carbon nanotube with highest length rather than highest diameter. But you also remember that beyond certain permissible limit, you cannot go to higher length because it will make the particle to settle down. So you need to remember this point in mind. So now I am talking about multi-phase model. So these are the governing equations. I'm not going to discuss deep into it because this will become another subject of criteria, that is computational heat transfer, separately with coding related concepts. So when I'm using this multi-phase mixture model, I am treating both the solid particle as well as liquid particle separately. That means two phases. One is the solid phase, that is the particle phase. Another one is the liquid phase, that is the pure water phase. So these two phases are treated separately, and the relative motion between these two phases, that is the slip and drift, will be taken into consideration, and we will obtain the necessary velocity field as well as the pressure field as well as the temperature field. So I'm not going to discuss much about these equations. So the same problem I have taken in order to see how the result is being applied. And this is the algorithm that we used to solve the multi-phase mixture model. So numerical method, and you can see here the difference between single phase and multi-phase. So the bottom figure, that is the velocity. The velocity is given on y-axis and the distance is given on the x-axis. So if you see the figure carefully, I have plotted it for a Reynolds number 400 and for 1.5 volume percentage single walled carbon nanotube nanofluid. And you can see that single phase velocity is higher when compared to the two phase velocity, which is denoted with the dotted line. Similarly, if you look at the right side figure, that is the temperature versus distance, you can see that when I am using two phase, that is mixture model, my temperature drops when compared to the single phase. So you can understand that two phase model is having slight difference when compared to single phase, because we are treating the two phases separately. It is more realistic when compared to single phase model, so that it will be very much close to experimental. Okay, so these are the experimental studies. So I'm going to directly show you the experimental results, maybe. Yeah. So the numerical, if you look at this particular figure, so I have taken if you see this particular table, the left side table, I have taken at 3 different Reynolds numbers, that is Reynolds number 30, Reynolds number 40, Reynolds number 50. The reason why I have chosen this much smaller Reynolds number is because whenever we are performing experiments in micro channel, we need to make sure that the flow is very, very smooth without any fluctuations. For ensuring smooth flow inside the micro channel, we need to inject the liquid using some sort of syringe pump. Since there is a limitation on the quantity of liquid that will be dispersed by the syringe pump, we need to perform the experiments at very, very low Reynolds numbers. So that is the reason I have chosen Reynolds number 30, 40 and 50. So I have chosen two different aspect ratios, aspect ratio 5 and aspect ratio 50, which is nothing but the width of the channel to the height of the channel ratio. Okay, and I have seen the difference between 21 percentage, 19 percentage and 19.03 percentage. Similarly, if you look at the right side figure, the difference between experimental result and the two-phase approach result and the single phase result also you can notice for 3 volume percentage carbon nanofluid. Okay, so you can see that in the literature, Lofty and Goktepe, they suggested that using two-phase models overestimates the heat transfer coefficient in comparison with the single-phase model. Okay, so that is what we observed here in the right side table. If you see two-phase model, it is showing at Reynolds number 50, 3.0934 average Nusselt number, whereas single phase approach is showing 2.87, whereas our experiment is coming as 1.81. So single phase approach is almost giving somewhat closer result to experimental. That is the reason this Lotfi and Goktepe, these two guys said that two-phase models overestimate the heat transfer coefficient when compared to single-phase models. So this is what we studied so far. And now coming to the natural convection, see, so far whatever studies we have carried out are in micro channels. So whenever we are injecting liquid into a micro channel, we need some additional pump, and that pump is used to circulate the liquid, and that liquid will enter into the micro channel from outside, and it will again leave the micro channel from exit. It is like some sort of open system. So whenever we are adopting open system in cooling of electronic devices, you need to be very much careful with the leakage. So because as it is electronic gadget or electronic device, once if the liquid leaks, it will immediately catch fire and the entire device will be burnt away, or the entire device will be damaged. So you need to be very, very much careful whenever you are incorporating liquid coolants into the electronic device. So one of the best way to do that is the closed system. Like you can see on the screen, it is just like a cavity filled with liquid, and because of natural convection, heat transfer is taking place. So one side is being imposed with high temperature and the other side is being imposed with low temperature. And because of the density difference, due to temperature difference, fluid movement will take place, and as a result, heat transfer will be done. Okay, so this is natural convection. So these are the results, grid dependency and validation. I'm not going to discuss much about this, and I'm straight away going to the results. So if you look at this particular figure, so on the x-axis I have given Grashof number, because Grashof number is a dimensionless number that comes into picture when we are dealing with natural convection. So I will tell you roughly, if Grashof number is high, the temperature difference delta T will be large. Whenever the temperature difference delta T is large, so more local fluctuations will come and more local fluid movement will take place. So as a result of this, more heat transfer will take place. That is the reason if you look at the figure, as Grashof number increases, my average Nusselt number increases. And as a result, depending upon the volume concentration of the nanoparticles also, my average Nusselt number increases. The pink color line, that is 1.5 volume percentage carbon nanotube based nanofluid, is having higher heat transfer performance. And pure water is having lower heat transfer performance. So similarly, coming to the right side figure, you can see here that the green color circle and the red color line, that is 3 volume percentage copper and 1 volume percentage carbon nanotube, is giving almost same heat transfer characteristics, whereas the blue color square line and wheatish color line, that is 1 volume percentage copper nanofluid and 1 volume percentage Al2O3 is giving same NU average values. So these two are nothing but these are equivalent nanofluid pairs. You can replace one with the other depending upon the cost and depending upon the availability. So now coming to the latest study of us. So I will take another just 5-10 minutes and I will wind up, then we will go for questions. So almost time is 10:42. So if you look at the screen, here you can see that we have taken lid driven cavity. I don't know how many of you are aware of this lid driven cavity. This is also a closed system. So where there will be a cavity on the top of where there will be a lid on the top of the cavity, and this lid will be moving with certain velocity. So whenever this lid is moving with certain velocity, the liquid that is present inside the cavity will undergo a swirling motion, will undergo a rotary motion, and it will try to extract enormous amount of heat that is being subjected from the bottom side. So we have taken a solid region and we have taken a stepped cavity. We have taken a stepped cavity. As you can see on the left side, it is a forward step. The center one is without any step, and the right side one is a backward step. So 3 cavities we have taken, and these 3 cavities are driven by means of lid. That is the reason it is called as a lid driven cavity. So there will be a moving lid on the top, and the liquid working fluid will be present inside the cavity, that is represented by the fluid zone, and there will be a solid zone on the bottom. So when we conducted studies on these 3 different stepped cavities for both forced convection as well as for mixed convection, we found out these results as you see on the screen. So the left side result that you see is average Nusselt number on the y-axis for a different Reynolds number. We have used laminar flow. The Reynolds number is within the laminar regime, and we have used pure water as the working fluid, and we have used different steps. So you can see that in the left side figure, you can see that the black color line is the highest average Nusselt number. So that is mixed convection with Grashof number 20,000. Okay, mixed convection with Grashof number 20,000. Forced convection with Grashof number 20,000 is underneath the mixed convection with Grashof number 20,000. That means within the laminar regime, whenever I am taking mixed convection, due to the presence of the step that is present in the solid region, rigorous mixing is taking place, and mixed convection effect is showing highest performance. Okay, so natural convection tendency is also very active in this type of case. So that is the reason we have gone for this. And if you look at the right side figure, you can understand that 3 volume percentage Al2O3 nanofluid is showing highest heat transfer performance. So that means among the 3 types of cavities, we used forward step, that is the left side cavity that you see on the screen is exhibiting highest heat transfer performance, and that forward cavity, in that forward cavity, 3 volume percentage aluminum oxide nanofluid is exhibiting highest Nusselt number. So this is how we conducted this study, and recently we have published this work in SN Applied Sciences by Springer. And coming to the next last slide, last result. So another 4 minutes I will complete. So not only conducting just studies of, with respect to Reynolds number, with respect to volume concentration, we also applied magnetic field, and we also saw how the heat transfer is being affected when different types of magnetic fields are applied. So as you see on the screen on left side, I have taken a lid-driven cavity problem without any step, and I have applied uniform magnetic field on both x-axis as well as y-axis. The right side figure, if you see, not only uniform, I also applied sinusoidal magnetic field, parabolic magnetic field, and incremental magnetic field. So these are the different types of magnetic field. And the numbers that you see on the screen are nothing but Hartmann numbers, 0, 20, 40, 0, 40, 0. These are nothing but Hartmann number. Hartmann number is a non-dimensional number that talks about magnetic field strength. What is the strength of the magnetic field that you applied on the geometry? The reason why we used this magnetic field concept is because it is very, very simple. Just when we are implementing this in laptop, by using battery power, we can generate magnetic field, and without direct contact with the processor, with the working fluid, we can change the hydrodynamics of the working fluid, and as a result, heat transfer performance will be altered. So that is what we found out in the graph. If you see, at different Reynolds numbers, we have plotted the average Nusselt number, and you can see that triangular shaped marks, that is 1.5 volume percentage SWCNT nanofluid with Hartmann number 0, that is giving higher heat transfer performance when compared to higher Hartmann number. So when we applied magnetic field on a closed cavity like this, so we got deterioration in the heat transfer performance. But we also tried applying magnetic field on open systems like microchannel that we discussed before. Then we are getting enhancement in the heat transfer performance under the influence of magnetic field. That I have already given in my other publications. You can go through them. But right now I didn't discuss those results because it will be very, very extensive. So when we are using magnetic field on a closed system like a lid-driven cavity, we are not getting any enhancement. There is no much efficiency that is coming out. So that is what this particular graph shows that. Similarly, if you see that when I am using different types of magnetic fields like incremental, sinusoidal, parabolic, uniform, you can see that when I am using incremental magnetic field, I am getting highest heat transfer performance. When I am using incremental magnetic field, I am getting highest heat transfer performance. So that incremental magnetic field is being applied with the different nanofluids, and here you can see that 1.5 volume percentage SWCNT nanofluid with Hartmann number 0 is showing highest heat transfer performance, which shows that, which concludes that using nanofluids in as advanced working fluid in microchannel heat sinks will be a promising field for cooling of electronic devices, especially high performance computers, supercomputers, data centers, laser diodes, microprocessors, microchips, etc. So with this, I'm going to conclude my talk. So if you are having any questions, you can ask me for another 5 minutes and we can wind it up. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
It was a nice presentation. This is Dr. M. Durga Prakash speaking.
Yeah.
So, this what kind of SWCNTs it is much preferable for cooling devices? is there any properties like electrical properties, mechanical properties, such kind of properties is only suitable for cooling devices? Is there
Yeah.
any so what kind of properties is required?
So actually, if you are really into selecting a nanoparticle for enhancing the cooling performance, you need to select a nanoparticle with high thermal conductivity. Okay, that
Okay.
is the first thing. And the second thing is when you are doing some computational work, numerical work, you don't take many practical problems into criteria. For example, whenever you are dispersing nanoparticles into the matrix of the base fluid, after some time, if you see the nanoparticles settle down, okay, so you need also to be sure that the nanoparticles are stable enough, because once if you disperse the nanoparticles into the base fluid and if you leave the solution idle for some time, all the particles will settle down. It should not happen. So the particles should have stable suspension capability. So these are the important parameters that you need to take into account. One is the high thermal conductivity and the second one is the stability. So
what about electrical properties? Like, is it required semiconducting property or completely metallic or like insulating property, or what kind of property is required?
Or if you are taking the pure heat transfer applications with the external forced convection, like if you are using a pump to inject the fluid and if you are trying to extract heat transfer, so then you don't need to worry about electrical properties. But when you are using the concept of dielectrophoresis, like you don't need to have an additional pump, the liquid by its natural tendency itself, it will move. So when you are applying different electric field locations, different electric field phenomena, non-uniform and uniform, then the liquid automatically it will move without any external force. So in that case, you need to select both pure fluid as well as nanoparticle with the specified electrical properties. So depending upon the application, but in general, like I told you, the particle should have high thermal conductivity, and the particle should have high stability. So these are the two things that you need to take into consideration.
Okay.
Any more
So
questions?
let's say one more question I have, like suppose I have something, some few micrometer size of one microfluidic channel is there. In that I want to do some cooling. So in that some, like let's say example, like 10 micrometer size microfluidic channel is there. So that it is a like continuously there is a fluid is getting like more heating. For the 10 micrometers microfluidic channel, how much the SWCNT's concentration is required to cool the channel?
You mean to say how much volume percentage of nanoparticles?
Yeah. How much volume percentage required CNTs?
So actually, see, so that you cannot say directly. Why? Because whenever you are pumping liquid through the micro channel, it all depends upon the Reynolds number that you are using. So Reynolds number is directly proportional to the velocity, right? Velocity of the flowing fluid. So suppose if you are trying to fix your device under laminar resume, then obviously it will have less heat transfer performance. Suppose if you are fixing it for transitional or turbulent resume, then you will obviously have higher heat transfer performance. So whenever you are going for higher heat transfer performance, your forced convection phenomena is dominating. Okay. So because your fluid velocity will be drastically high, right? So in that case, you can disperse very, very less volume concentration of nanoparticles into the matrix of the base fluid. It's not a problem. But when you are doing it in laminar resume, since our forced convection phenomena is very, very small, you need to disperse high concentration. So you cannot say that based on your microchannel dimensions, you cannot fix the volume concentration, because it will depend on your flow resume also.
Okay.
So any more
and
questions?
why it is SW CNTs? Why not like multi-wall CNTs or other kind of drop in.
You can even go for multi-walled carbon nanotubes as well. The reason why I used SWCNT is because single-walled carbon tube is nothing but a single layer of carbon sheet will be wrapped as a tube. Okay.
Yeah,
so when you are wrapping single layer of carbon nanotube as a sheet, its weight will be very less and it will float on the top of the liquid.
Okay.
So it will have more stability compared to multi-walled carbon nanotube. So taking stability into criteria only, I have adopted that, but it doesn't matter. See, even MWCNTs are also being used in cooling of electronic devices. Even when you are dispersing MWCNTs, what they are doing is they are using a concept called surfactant. So they are dispersing, like when we are washing clothes, we are what is it? We are using this washing powder, right? So that sort of surfactant, if you just disperse into the base fluid, it will form as a coating around the nanoparticle, and it will make the nanoparticle to be stable enough inside the matrix.
Correct.
Okay, clear?
Yeah. Thank you.
Any more questions? So if you don't have any questions, then maybe we can wind it up. So there are few questions in the chat box. There are few questions in the chat box. The one question is, can we use turbulent flow in the place of laminar flow? Yeah, you can use it still. You can use it. See, the only thing is, whenever I am using a micro channel, I am using it in such a way that continuum approach still holds. Okay. So there is another study called as MDS, molecular dynamic simulations. So whenever continuum approach is not holding, I need to go for molecular level simulations. But as long as you are stable enough with the continuum approach, you can go to any type of resume, laminar or transitional or turbulent. So is it possible to mix air and liquid cooling together? Yeah, it is possible. You can mix air and liquid cooling together, as well as even you can use phase change materials also. So certificates, when you will provide, sir, that you have to ask APSSDC. Okay. So if you don't have any more questions, maybe we can wind it up. If you have, then you can ask.
Good morning, Rajesh sir. I'm Venu.
Yeah. Tell me, Venu.
Sir, will it make any difference when we use ANSYS Fluent and ANSYS CFX solvers? Means in results, will it be same or it will vary, sir?
It's a good question. To be honest, I don't think so. It will vary. It will be same. But I haven't tried it practically. So you should not take my answer in a much promising way. You need to check it once. Yeah.
Then star CCM plus is also one of.
That's what I'm saying. In any solver you use, whether it is ANSYS Fluent or COMSOL Multiphysics or star CCM plus, I don't think so the result will vary, because if the result varies, then there is no point in validating with the existing literature.
Yes.
Okay, so one solver will not give you one result, another solver will not give you another result, right? So more or less, in my opinion, I think that they will give the same result until and unless you apply the same conditions.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, any more? Sure, I can share the PPT. Yeah. So, okay, fine. Thank you very much for joining my talk. Sir, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you for the valuable time, and thank you. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Sir, you can share the PPT with me, sir, so that I can forward to all the faculty and students.
Yeah, sure. I'll do it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.